Morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Clifford Stoun. I was a Sergeant First Class, United States Army. I had a secret clearance with nuclear surety. I could get the clearance that I needed to do whatever it was that was necessary for me to do at the time on special operations when I was called in on those. What I'm referring to here is that I was involved in situations where we actually did recoveries of crashed saucers, for lack of a better term, debris thereof. There were bodies that were involved with some of these crashes, also some were alive. While we were doing all this, we were telling the American public there was nothing to it. We were telling the world there was nothing to it. I know we're not alone in the universe. I know that the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. It's evidence that has been denied to the American people.
Things getting out of there.
How many alive beings you saw of all these crashes?
I would say, dealing with the crashes themselves, there were about 5 or 6 instances in which we were involved with the entities.
Alive or?
They were alive. Some were injured, but they were alive. The other thing, people.
How they dealing with the oxygen?
Most of them had no problem breathing. Now, does that mean that they had?
Or maybe they're not breathing.
No, they breathe.
Okay.
And it may not be the oxygen content of the air that is what they're taking in. Dare I say, carbon monoxide will kill us. But some of the entities actually had carbon monoxide they breathed.
Oh, that make me to think that probably atmosphere contains much more carbon monoxide
actually
than oxygen. So this is excellent for them.
Absolutely.
But danger for us to breathe.
Well, see, plants go ahead and take in carbon monoxide and use it for the photosynthesis, and the nutrients for the plants, and they give off oxygen as a byproduct. So, and I don't know how to fit that in with how they breathe, but, there's a give and take process there. But also, like with first aid, our first aid's not suitable to be using first aid for them. So I have to be very careful because it sounds so crazy. But, with plaster casting, we actually use plaster in some of the cases because some of our visitors were almost like rock.
Like what?
Like rock. That's the best way I can put it. But, if we were like rock, we couldn't move. But they could move. And I don't know how to explain that. That wasn't...
Like telekinesis?
Huh?
Telekinesis? Or...
Well, you have a rock statue.
Okay.
And, if the arm moves, and it's going to break off, bottom line. But they could move. There was like some type of texture there. But at the same time, if they were injured, there'd be a fluid coming out. But you couldn't take thread and needle or cat's guts and go ahead and sew that up. You couldn't stitch it. So we actually would use plaster Paris to go ahead and put it on. Now, it wasn't like the plaster Paris you go and get at a hardware store. I don't know. The medical teams that showed up were specially trained to deal with that. When I say we have 57 different species, the book I saw that they didn't say, here, take this, read it, there'll be a test on Thursday, so make sure you know everything in it. I was privy because some of the people liked me, and some of the people actually felt sorry for me because they knew something I didn't know. It wasn't that they did me a favor because I was 100% medically unsuited for military service. I wanted to serve my country. So they did me a favor by letting me in. But from the time I got in to the time I finally got out, then I was asked to come back in, I'll put it that way. I was dealing with UFOs. When I went ahead and decided to retire, they sent me to Germany after my little spat up here, and where they tried to court-martial me for it. I went to Germany. I found I was getting back involved in UFOs again, and my family wasn't going to get to join me. I knew whoever was in charge of this, that wasn't the Army. So I just sat back and smiled, did my retirement papers, put it in. It went through channels while I was waiting for the retirement, my retirement to be approved. I came back home on a 30-day leave. My retirement was approved, and I sat back just waiting for the time that I had to go to Fort Bliss to out process. 2 days before I was to go to Fort Bliss to out process, they found out the people who were in charge of whatever was going on with UFOs found out that I was going to retire. They canceled my orders, had them hold me there for 60 days, I think it was, at Fort Bliss, pending approval of my retirement.
So when they crash, do you know if the place they're coming from, probably they tracking them, probably they knew that something is happening?
And when, the whole situation is, we'd always go to a staging area. We didn't just fly right in on top of the crash. We would go to a staging area, and we would go ahead, attempt to make the recovery of the debris there, anything else that might be there. But we knew at the same time that our visitors, they had their own rescue teams, just like we do here. There's a plane crash here on Earth. They are out trying to recover, and a lot of times they recover the entities, and the crash would still be there. They know that there was very little we could recover from it.
They came and they took the aircraft.
If they could, they would.
Bodies?
Yes.
Just let the bodies?
No. The bodies, they'd pick those up. They'd pick up survivors, and if they could, they would remove the craft.
And they took also the dead bodies?
Oh yes, they have reverence for their dead, just like we have reverence for ours. Good example, it was in, I think it was November 1963, and this actually was in the Blue Book files. One of the best kept open secrets within the U.S. government is the relationship that Edwards Air Force Base has with UFOs. But in November 1963, I believe it was, they had a UFO that came down on the dry lake bed there at Edwards Air Force Base. Immediately, a strike team, and the strike team is a well-armed security force that's primarily used in connection with providing security to nuclear sites and nuclear facilities, immediately was dispatched to go out and recover that UFO. As the strike team headed out there, they saw a similar, identical UFO come overhead of the disabled UFOs on the ground. It went ahead like in a leaf falling from a tree, say, going back and forth like this, came down over the UFO, was disabled on the ground. Then it started to go back up doing the same thing. The UFO that was on the ground came right up with it, like it had a tractor beam, for lack of a better term, lifting it up. So we did not recover that UFO. Now, had we continued going out there, and we had the strike team engage the UFO that came in to recover it, then the strike team would have no story to tell. Now, this story right here, you would think it'd be highly classified, and it probably is now. But at the time, for some odd reason, there was a report put in the Blue Book files about this incident occurring. It would be in 19 '66, I think, that Look magazine would have a story done by Professor Hynek in which Hynek himself talked about that case.
For the same case.
What's that?
For the same case you
For this case I just told you about, he talked about it. And of course he knew at that time, and he even stated in the article, this is in the Blue Book file. And what he was trying to show at that time, because he had already broke ranks with the Air Force. And he actually, Professor Hynek, who was the chief scientific consultant to Blue Book on UFO cases, he started off as a non-believer that UFOs would eventually go by the way of the sea monster. It was seasonal. But as time went on, he started to realize that there were incredible stories being told by very credible witnesses, not given to, freaking out and giving weird descriptions of things they were seeing. They were reporting things as they actually saw them, and that these people should be taken more serious. When the Robinson panel met to discuss UFOs and what they should do about them, the Robinson panel made a recommendation, Operation Ridicule. You go ahead and you ridicule people making UFO reports. Now, why would you do that? Well, the average man on the street, what he's reporting doesn't mean anything. The military people, though, they were reporting things. And of course, the Robinson panel couldn't distinguish between civilians and military. But in their heart, that's what they meant. We didn't need John Q. Public going ahead and telling us about anything they're seeing. That was not important. These were the people we wanted to ridicule. We wanted to go ahead and remind the military people who were making reports of their national security oaths. And what they were reporting, unless they were told otherwise, was to remain classified. But it had a slingshot effect, because now the military people felt, wait a minute, you're going to criticize UFO witnesses? Well, that includes us. One pilot made it clear during a briefing and told them in one of the Blue Book status files, status reports, it has it in there where he stated, I could be flying wingtip to wingtip with a spaceship and I would never report it. Now, with these being the people who were sent on the intercept missions, who were to put their lives in between any type of potential threat and the security of the civilians that they were charged to protect, to have them go ahead and say, I wouldn't say anything, that's very dangerous. And the government got to the point where they realized this. So they made it clear, you report it, then we're not going to tell you not to talk. But we are telling you if you do talk, that it may be the situation where we're not going to be supporting what you're saying. So they ran into that. So it was hit and miss quite a few times. But you did have pilots that came out and said UFOs are real, that we have pursued them. They were required to file a report under JANEP. And that right there was a joint Army-Navy air publication, 146E, that required any unusual sightings to be reported. And in many of the instances, many UFO reports was filed that way. The U.S. Air Force says, well, there must not have been any JANEP reports ever filed, because we don't have copies. Well, you know what's interesting? The Canadian government has hundreds of copies of interceptions attempted by...
Also.
What's that?
The British.
Yeah, but they were not part of the North American Treaty Association. That was, I can't even remember what they call it now, but the Canadian and U.S. government alliance in trying to intercept anything that threatened the North American continent. UFOs are real. We have visitors, not of this planet, that visit us. Now, saying that, some UFOs are interplanetary. Others are multidimensional. And the beings are the same thing. Now,
This is super real.
this is real. It's as real as the nose on your face, so to
Why are
speak.
people still thinking that this is science fiction?
Because we're conditioned to believe that. The one thing that bothers me is when we get out and people see, like what we're doing right now, a lot of people get out, wow, that's good entertainment. I'm not here talking to you to try to be entertaining. I'm here trying to give you facts as I know them about the existence and reality of unidentified flying objects, and that some of these unidentified flying objects really, truly are of extraterrestrial origin or multi-dimensional, and they're under intelligent control by intelligence not of this world. Now, with that being said, some UFOs that are reported turn out to be misidentification of natural objects, natural phenomena, and that's the case in many things. A lot of times you might see a B-52 flying, and later on somebody else sees the same aircraft and they go ahead and say, oh, that right there is a T-10, and two different types of aircraft. But yet, they're trying to identify something that they are familiar with, i.e. an aircraft.
So they're super real like me and you.
Absolutely. I mean, the whole situation is, you've heard me say it before and I'll say it again. Too many people look at our visitors and they view them in the way of we view cartoons. That, they're cartoon characters. No, our visitors, they have families. They have likes and dislikes. There are things that they enjoy as far as having fun. But they are so far removed and advanced from us. Our scientists say that in another million years, we may be real lazy and not even think about going out and search among the stars. No, that's going to be a real challenge to us in another million years. Because no matter how much you learn, how much you know, there's always more to learn and more to get to know about, to further your knowledge of not just our world, but other worlds out there. Not just our understanding of a three-dimensional reality, but of a multi-dimensional reality. And in a million years, we're still not going to know everything. In a million years, science will still continue to progress. No, it's not going to die in a million years. We're not going to get to that plateau where there's nothing more to learn, nothing more to know. There's always going to be a step beyond. And as long as humanity maintains that thirst for knowledge, we're going to keep reaching further and further and further into the unknown for answers. Everyone doesn't even have to worry about that anymore. People will go ahead and start ridiculing these people when they come out. So the people don't want, people in the military, people in the know of what's really going on, when they get out, they want to live a normal life. When you make the decision that you're going to talk about UFOs and about their reality and about the entities that are actually flying these machines, the entities that many of us are having interaction with, then the whole situation is that these people are going to be ridiculed. It affects their family life. I know people who have lost their family because they couldn't deal with all the family. And it's not just you. Your children get ridiculed. Your wife gets ridiculed.
And that's still happening
That's
today.
still happening today. The Central Intelligence Agency are the ones that are the keeper of the secret. Even when many of the presidents aren't being briefed, the director of the Central Intelligence Agency is in the know. The office that they have that does the real investigation and gathers all the data from the other intelligence units or intelligence activities in the field, that's the Office of Scientific Investigation, which is an agency within the Central Intelligence Agency.